Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Continuing our run through Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Right now we're up to the episode called Things Past. It's the 8th episode of the 5th season. First aired on November 18th, 1996. It was written by Michael Taylor, directed by LeVar Burton. And in this episode, Sisko, Odo, Dax, and Garak are trapped 7 years in the past on Terok Nor, but everyone thinks that they're condemned Bajorans, and only Odo's memory can save them. We're joined by Clay. Clay, how are you?
Good. Ducat got that Bajoran fever.
He does. It's a thing at this
consistent. Point. Yeah. Has there ever been a story where someone sees a weird, like, guilt ghost and just comes out and tells everybody what's going on? Like, just, hey, guys, I know this is a weird situation as it is. I would also like to tell you I am seeing a very strange guilt ghost that's probably going to make me be a little bit on edge. So just keep that in mind if I start acting weird.
I guess it's just got to be bad enough of an event where you don't want to tell people that you're seeing the ghost and reliving the horrible thing that you went through in the past. Yeah, it's a very writerly specific thing that goes on. But I guess we'll have to get into it. We'll take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay are going to come back and we're going to break down Things Past.
This is Terok Nor, DS9 during the occupation.
Time travel?
No, it's more than that. Our clothes have changed.
Could we be in a hollow suite?
Computer in program. Let's assume that's a no for the moment.
Benjamin, we're not attracting any attention.
And we should be. Humans, trills, and changelings didn't just stroll through Terok Nor unnoticed.
But then I should be getting some attention as well. We are in the Bajoran sector, and Cardassians weren't exactly welcome here.
I don't think they see you as a Cardassian. I'm beginning to think they don't see any of us as who we really are.
The clothes we're wearing are Bajoran. They're treating us like Bajorans.
Maybe they see us as Bajorans.
So going off of your points about the guilt ghost in the opening here, Clay, how long did it take for you to figure out what was going on in this episode?
I think I got it about maybe a little less than halfway through.
Mm-hmm. It's neat on rewatch because you see how Thrax is Odo with the lines that they give him.
Oh really? Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so you can see Odo's voice in Thrax the Cardassian if you're sort of paying attention to how he's talking about things. I think they have a line in here. Some character says that he is unusual for a Cardassian. I think Sisko says that about him.
I actually thought it was going to take a bit of a different tack from the way that they set it up at the beginning. I thought that it was going to be, well, it was kind of this. I thought it was going to be a Twilight Zone scenario where Garak is forced to realize that the Cardassians were shitty people.
Yeah, that's sort of sort of the theme running underneath everything with the cold open and stuff like that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, like that episode of the Twilight Zone that they did again in the movie, where it's like the super racist guy walks out and he ends up all of a sudden he's Jewish in Nazi Germany.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like that, and it kind of was that, but not exactly that. It was a little bit of an inversion. So I was not expecting it to be so weighing on Odo's conscience. So they give you a little bit of a swerve there at the beginning, which I think helps make it a little bit hard to parse out what's going on.
I think that it's one of the things that I like about this episode. It's most obviously a sort of this is referencing, if not building off of the Necessary Evil episode back from the second season, where Odo had a flashback as a noir detective to trying to figure out what went wrong on the station 7 years ago.
Did I watch that one?
You did. Yeah, it's the one that ends with Kira is revealed to have killed the Cardassian that came into, she was trying to steal something from him. He came in the office and she killed him. And then they have the ending scene where Kira asks Odo if he can ever trust her again. And then it kind of ends on that note. Right. This is the same kind of thing, except flipped around for them. And they wanted to go back to do another Terok Nor episode, which is what this is. They didn't want to do another flashback thing, so they had to do a time travel thing here. we can talk about the time travel thing, but I think that what's good about these episodes and why I kind of like them is that they are, you sort of need these past Terok Nor episodes to remind you about where the Cardassians stand and what the station was all about before it became a Federation station. Because I think that the longer you spend with the Cardassians like Garak and Dukat and you don't see really what the Cardassians are involved in, you kind of feel more sympathetic towards them than I think you should. You know, right. It's just the fact that you don't see how brutal of a race and occupiers they are, that it kind of fades off and you kind of think that, oh, Garak's charming and everything like that. And it's aggressive when you go back to something like this. And Garak is basically saying pro-slavery arguments through a lot of the episode. I think it grounds everything and it just makes the relationship between the species a little bit better. And it really reasserts the fact that DS9 is born out of a forced labor camp. You know, like that's a very important part of where the station is and what the show comes from.
Well, it's sort of the same kind of issue. It kind of touches on the issue that people have about what's the correct way to portray these monstrous characters. Generally in speaking people from history, right? Like, how should you portray a Nazi in a movie? Should you give a Nazi any redeeming qualities at all? Should he just be a complete monster? Like, how much humanization ends up being detrimental to the reality of the situation, right? And I think that's dipping back in and giving you a sense of what Terok Nor? Terok
Nor, yeah.
Every time I think of it, I think Tech Noir, which is the name of the bar from the Terminator. But the Terok Nor stuff gives you, like you're saying, it regrounds the situation of the occupation and kind of reminds you that, you know, while these people do have relatable traits because they are, you know, every human on some level is relatable, right?
Yeah.
Or every person, I shouldn't say human.
Every character in the show, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. That doesn't excuse the fact that they might be an awful person who did awful things, or at the very least has awful views.
Yeah, and I think that they do a good job with both of the Cardassian characters. I think they don't really. Garak doesn't have a moment of clarity, which I kind of appreciate. Like, he talks about it a lot, and you sort of see through his actions that he is coming to terms with maybe this isn't as great of an idea as I thought it was at the start of the episode. Dukat is also interesting because they're just continuing to flesh out Dukat as kind of a megalomaniac who really seems convinced that what he did was a good thing for everybody. It's not really an act on Dukat's part. He really truly believes that he is the benevolent dictator who is doing a good thing for the universe and a good thing for the Bajorans by doing everything that he's done here. And I think it's a good episode for him.
Yeah, I thought the stuff with him was great because I thought this episode was great in terms of showing how well they know their characters, especially their side characters like Dukat and Garak. Because Dukat at this point, it would be very easy to forget what his motivation is and what his point of view is, and they don't. And you only get a couple scenes with him, but they very succinctly get across the consistency of his character, which I really liked.
He's
It's also funny to me, you know, talking about the portrayal of, you know, oppressors and stuff. Like, could you imagine? I assume they never did this because I never watched the show. But could you imagine if there was an episode of like Hogan's Heroes where they have a flashback episode where we get to see Colonel Clink presiding over like a concentration camp execution or something?
Yeah, right. It takes a special kind of breed, I guess, to get that point across. Yeah, it's it's a dark sort of history, and I like the thing that I think people have mentioned before, that it's when you watch the station in the future and you see normal episodes where Starfleet and the Bajorans have done everything, you kind of forget the purpose of the promenade, which is that the promenade is a prison with the guard walkways above it, so that like when the guards can look down at people, and you you kind of maintain that because in the series, Odo is always walking around prowling the upper decks like that, looking down on everybody. And that's kind of a holdover for him. But I think that I like these episodes because I think that they do a good job of regrounding everything. It's good to see characters like Quark and what he was up to before this happened. It's good to see the Ducats and everything going along. It's good to see what the Bajorans were up to, the sort of random brutality of the Cardassians. And I think that the being Odo's story, I think this does a pretty good job. My main problem with this episode is that to get to this story, it's incredibly convoluted what they have to do. Yeah. Like the getting to the time travel aspect is all over the place. The resolution is kind of all over the place. And if you focus on the middle bit, I think it's fine. But the periphery edges are a little bit rough.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. It's one of the clunkier technobabble explanations they've ever had, where it's like they have an explanation at the beginning which turns out not to really be true, but then they have to explain it further at the end.
Well, it gets augmented. I think it's true, they just don't understand why it did something.
Yeah, and like the idea that this thing activated some sort of dormant shape changeling
psychic
genes
ability
or something, psychic ability, and
Yeah.
then launch them into a miniaturized version, like a LAN party of the Great Link or whatever it is.
So my question, does that mean that Sisko, Garak, and Dax are aware of what happened in the dream? Or do they need Odo to do his report before they know what happened? Or were they just unconscious?
I was under the impression that they knew.
Okay.
Because you don't get any scenes. I wonder if that might be something that's missing from this episode is a scene with, at the very least, Odo and Sisko, but I don't know if that would be any more or less beneficial than the scene that you get with Kira.
Okay. See,
you know what I mean?
My problem with the Kira scene is that I know they're trying to mirror Necessary Evil and flip it around. Mm-hmm. It feels a little bit weak because she only just shows up at the end and is like, "Hey, I read your report. What's that all about?" Like, it doesn't feel earned in the way that Necessary Evil did, because in Necessary Evil, she was a part of that plot the whole way through, and the reveal actually was a flip on the story at the end.
And I know maybe it would be too I don't know. I was going to say, do you think they should have maybe just had obviously she was having a baby, so she couldn't do this, I guess.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what her status is at this point.
Well, yeah, we're still unsure. I guess according to some listeners, she is wearing like a body bump on some episodes, but I don't know if it's this one or if whatever is going on. Yeah.
Well, regardless, perfect world, no baby involved. Right?
Preach,
right,
brother.
guys?
Yeah, preach.
Would it make more sense to have Kira in the Dax spot?
Yes.
Because in that, I mean, she's Bajoran, so it kind of takes away from the masking thing, which seems a little bit forced anyway. But no, I guess she would have to.
Well, I think that would add a level to the Ducat scenes that Dax can't really do.
It would. Yeah, I guess it would still work. I guess it could still work. Because it's just changing identities. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're changing. You know, like there's still different people in that world. So this, it doesn't make a difference whether or not it's Dax or Kira. It's still a different person that she's becoming. So.
Yes, right. I don't think Dax adds much to that story.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah, I think it would be thematically more interesting to have Kira there, especially if she gets to witness Odo coming clean about this stuff, you know?
Yeah. I'd agree with that. So as it is, she just kind of shows up at the end and has the confrontation with Odo and everything. But I guess we can just focus on the Odo storyline here. It is the point that the writers wanted to make with this was that they were finding it increasingly unbelievable at this point that someone who was the head warden of the Cardassian occupation would not have really done anything wrong during that time. And they were a little bit confused about how the Bajorans would still kind of like him, or like the Bajorans would see him favorably. And I think that's a good point. And I think this episode sort of confronts that. It seems a little bit obvious to me, just the way that Odo reacts to everything, that something's going on with him. You know, something is there from the beginning. He's very nervous.
You mean you've never dropped a spoon and had like a full body freak out?
That was the worst. The literal blood on his hands is probably the worst bit of symbolism in the episode.
A little on the nose with that one.
I think that I think it sort of ties in nicely because I do think that his nervousness is tied into the fact that he can no longer shapeshift, or at least I think that's an appropriate reaction for Odo. Like his inability to protect himself through shapeshifting probably should have been making him a little bit more nervous at things. And I think that, I don't know if this episode is saying it. It's saying that this one's saying more that it's his memory and being very nervous about him knowing what's going to happen. But I do think that his inability to protect himself should be kind of a focus of that. He can't protect against the bombs. He can't help anybody in this situation. And piling onto that is this whole memories of things past that he has to deal with.
Yeah. I liked his. I actually really liked the scene when they're after the bombing, when they're in the jail, and he's screaming at what's his name?
Thrax.
Smith there, Thrax. About all of the things that he didn't do. It was at that point where I figured out what was going on. I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. That's interesting. But I liked his on top of his inability to shape change, his impotence of knowing the facts but being unable to convey them. It's, getting a second chance almost and not being able to change anything.
Yes, yeah.
Because Thrax ain't got time for that because the Tigers are playing tonight. And he never misses a game.
Well, it's a Odo can't convince his younger self of something there. Yeah. He's realizing how stubborn he was. And, I think that the main point of the episode is just all things Star Trek are, it generally takes the outsider characters who have sort of bizarre flaws like the Cardassians and Odo and everything, Odo's authoritarian edge. And simply by living in the Federation, it kind of moralizes them. They become normalized characters who realize what they've done in the past and the wrongs that they've done and the sort of extremism of their previous views. And they do that with Odo, and I think they do it pretty well because I think that Odo's authoritarianism has been a consistent key for him and his sense of justice and everything like that. And I think that this is a pretty effective way of examining that, of the things that could have gone wrong, especially building off a necessary evil. And I think that his reaction is good. I think it's a good Odo episode. I don't know if it really wraps up as strongly as it could have, but I think that the way he plows through his whole dealing with the guilt ghosts that are popping up is very effective. And I think that it deepens that character by having to see storylines like this.
Yeah, and I really like the taking to task sort of the vacuum of quote unquote facts and justice through that character, and having him, because he's someone who has had a very, very drastic change since this point in his history. So getting him to kind of have that back and forth with his former self, and have him, who used to be this, cold heart down the middle, objective fact character, be like, no, objective facts are not the only thing that matter. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't exist in a vacuum. It's almost like you would say, Wes, that objectivity is a subjective thing.
That's right. I'd go the other way, I think, and say subjectivity is objective. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's nice where you can act. You don't get many chances to have a character very specifically address the change he's gone through, and have it not feel completely forced. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like he's not giving. I mean, he does a little bit, but he's not giving like a I accidentally killed a kid with my head speech. He's getting to show how he's grown as a character through actual interaction and action. You know what I mean?
Yes, right. It's not the Worf soccer story, unfortunately. Odo doesn't have a badminton story that things go wrong.
I will say, even if I think this story would still probably work. I don't mean the show. I mean like the story of how he put these guys to death by, accident, I guess, wrongly convicted.
Yeah, just not doing the legwork basically that he should have done to find their innocence. Yeah.
I think that story would probably still work if he told it instead of seeing it, because that story at least is consistent with his character in terms of how he has changed and where he came from.
Yeah. Yep.
So I could see him just monologuing that story and having it work in a way that the, soccer story doesn't.
Yeah. So what?
I still can't get over that fucking Sokka story.
So what did you think of the very Christmas past vision?
I wish it had been like Highlight or something weirder. Where it's like I was playing an intense game of Highlight.
Or he was in a martial arts contest or something, and he just brutally...
I was in a martial arts contest, and as you know, I'm very bad at fighting.
So what'd you think of the Ghost of Christmas Past type reveal? I like it, just the flashback on what I'm talking about, where Odo watches the guys get executed. I like it because I like seeing old Odo there, watching the whole execution. I thought that's really effective. I like his costume for whatever reason. He looks like a badass in that costume. But what did you think of it?
Sexy, smooth trapezius muscles just dripping off of his neck.
Copying the Cardassians a little bit.
Yeah. No, I like that stuff. I thought it was pretty effective. I think those sort of like jumpy guilt ghost kind of things are, your mileage can really vary with that stuff.
Yeah.
But I liked the overall sort of dreamlike nature of the story in general. I liked the way that, when they thought they would were getting out, they would just, hard cut to them being back in the prison and that kind of thing. I like that stuff. And I also liked, my favorite part about that end sequence is that they are viewing the execution from like across the way. So like he can't even get there to stop it if he wants to,
right.
Like he's helpless. Yeah, he's helpless by distance and by time. I thought that was good. Yeah. And being able to, I thought it was very effective. I thought it was well done.
It's I like the episode. I don't really know why it's not really a classic for me. There feels like there's something sort of wiggling around. I don't really like the opening. I don't like the setup. There's a lot of scenes where Worf and Bashir are talking to each other about what the problem is that I don't really think are very effective, and I don't think that they move the story along or anything. But
I think it's also an unnecessary detail to show that when Garak gets punched in the face, he's bleeding in real life, because that never comes up again.
No,
like there's no point where, because that's what I thought it was going to be one of these things where someone gets shot. Like I just watched Inception again last night.
You die.
Yeah,
in real
exactly.
Life,
yeah. I was watching Inception, and that's the first thing I was thinking of was, it's like when the guy gets shot, and it's like, well, if he dies here, he's in limbo for 20,000 years or some shit like that. I thought that was going to come back, but it didn't.
I think that's what they're implying, though, right? That's they don't really focus on it, but that is what they're saying. And I don't know. It feels like an unnecessary detail. Maybe it's just because this came out in 96, and all that stuff came out after that we're talking about, where it's kind of just become public consciousness that if you die in your dream, you die in real life.
I don't have a problem with the mechanic itself. I just don't think it was necessary to add to the story. I think the only reason they did that was to add some front-loaded tension that is irrelevant to the story they're actually telling. You know what I mean? Like there's no, I guess the only time it kind of comes back, if you really wanted to reach for it, is at the end when they've lined the three of them up to be executed. I guess maybe the idea is that the viewer is now thinking, oh shit, well, if they get executed here, they're going to die in real life. But they never like circle back to that and make that a point.
And that's such an obvious dream sequence too, when it happens, that you don't really appreciate it for what it is. At that point, it feels like the story has moved away from this time travel-y aspect to more it's in Odo's brain, because the way that it's shot is very like fisheye lensy. It doesn't look realistic. And the problem with the Garak nosebleed thing is that I actually think it lost something when Worf and Bashir have a conversation about it. Like Bashir's trying to sort of rationalize what this is, and it really knocks it down a little bit. I understand the imagery better than Bashir talking about, like, well, maybe he had a vascular psychosomatic issue and, he could give himself a stroke. Maybe he can't break his bones, but we could give himself a stroke. It's like, this is a little bit too much detail. I don't need all this.
Yeah, it feels like they just did it because if you take that out, there's no real tension pressure on the situation coming from of the situation that they're in. You're just kind of like watching them navigate this dream thing.
Yes.
Until the end when the execution thing is set up. There's no like, we need to get out of here because of X. We need to get them out of here because of X. So if you put that thing in there where, he's bleeding, like, because he get punched in the dream, he's bleeding in real life, that at least, even though completely arbitrarily puts on a little bit of pressure as to why they might need to get out of there. You know?
So why do they have this opening scene at all? What if this episode opened with them waking up in the past and the reveal at the end was just that they had some kind of accident? Would that work better? Like I think you could get around that if you actually thought that they had time traveled in the episode, and it turns out not to be that. It's just all in Odo's memory. But it feels to me that they waste an awful lot of time with the runabout scene opening it. And
I actually like the runabout scene because I think you get, because honestly, I didn't totally remember. I either didn't remember or I didn't know that Odo was held in like high esteem by the Bajorans because of the way he handled stuff during the occupation. So I appreciated that they kind of leaned into that a little bit. And they, like I said, they do it kind of like they give you a little bit of a red herring because they're really focusing on Garak, but they're giving you this stuff about Odo being a hero and, you know, them all loving him and all this kind of stuff.
He always did the right thing, according to the Bajorans.
Yeah, exactly. They're setting up what the problem is, or what the point of tension in Odo for the episode is. So I think that's important to have in there. I think you probably, I don't know. I think there's a better way you probably could handle it instead of just having Worf and Bashir standing over them talking every now and then.
Yeah, right.
And like even the way that they find the runabout is really clunky, where it's just like
drifts,
a hard.
It just drifts into space. Yeah.
It's just a hard cut, and it's like, well, the runabout's back, and everybody's knocked out. I don't know what happened. You know, it's really kind of clunky. They could have. I don't know. There's probably a more elegant solution to how to handle that stuff. But
yeah. It is very, very clunky. I mean, you sound like you're not super I don't want to say that you're not enthused. It sounds like you liked it, but it sounds like we're also kind of a similar mindset where this is not really 5 out of 5 material. And I don't know why, because I find Odo's story to be good. It maybe feels a little bit cliche or something. Like it feels a little bit predictable, even though I do think that it's very, the emotional response and like the way that they earn the ending makes sense to me. But I think that the ending might have something to do with it. I feel that the ending sort of goes on a little bit too long, and I really don't like the end line where Odo answers the question. Kira's like, "Did you kill any other innocent people?" I would have preferred Odo didn't answer that, and it just hung on him, and then the scene went to black. You know what I mean? Like that feels a little bit too bluntly Star Trek. And I think that the show, if you don't understand that Odo is now racked with guilt about every single decision that he made in the past, I don't think you were paying attention to the episode.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that last scene where she says that, and he's like, "I honestly don't know."
Right.
It's like,
it turns it into a joke almost.
Yeah, it's like when someone asks you if you have any kids, and you're like, "Not that I know of," but like a really dark, serious version of that. When they cut to the credits, I was just like, "Holy shit, that's a downer of an ending."
Yeah. So you had similar thoughts about the ending. It sounds like. Did you?
Yeah, it was a little too much probably, but I think it was a little too much. But I was also impressed that they left it so bleak.
Yes, and it sounds like you didn't remember Necessary Evil, but it's very. I prefer the ending to Necessary Evil. I think a little bit to this one, but it's the same bleak ending there, where both Kira and Odo have flip-flop versions of each other, where they see the weaknesses in the other, even though they've grown over the past 7 years that they've known each other, and they're still learning about things about each other. They were on different sides of the whole occupation, and now they're working together and sort of learning that they maybe aren't. As close as they thought they were, which is more problematic for Odo because he still has romantic feelings for Kira, you would have to assume. But yeah, I just think that go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the more I think about it, the more I think I would have preferred Kira in the episode instead of Dax, because I mean, I feel like now that you've reminded me of the previous episode, I think there was probably a missed opportunity to kind of circle back to that a little bit, and because I feel like she's well within her right to be like, dude, you judged me pretty hard for something I did a while ago.
Yeah.
While you're here sitting on the unintended death of 3 innocent people.
Right. Yes. You're throwing that back in his face a little bit. Yeah.
Which, I mean, you know, that would be kind of a dick thing to do on her part. But I mean, I think there's, I like their scene at the end, but I think if you wanted to, you really could have, you know, dug into that shit.
Yeah, I think my problem is that I don't know how to handle that at this point. I don't know if Kira should have been angrier at the end, or if enough time has passed and she is now, because of what she went through in Necessary Evil, she's now aware that sacrifices had to be made by both sides. And I think that the ending here kind of straddles the middle. I don't think that she's either angry enough or forgiving enough of what he's done. And I don't really understand Kira's point of view by the end of it. And I think if she had been in the position of Dax, she would have had a more personal reminder about what the Cardassians were up to, because she would have had to deal with Dukat the entire episode.
Yeah.
And I think that would have really strengthened her position and probably made her more angry at Odo at the end, which I think is an appropriate response.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's a missed opportunity not to have her there. I think that would have been very interesting.
I wonder why they had Dax. As far as I can tell, the only thing Dax makes the little computer scanner, or does Garak make that when he finds their identities? I think Garak does that, actually.
Garak does that. Dax breaks them out of prison.
Oh, that's right. But anyone could do that, I guess, because she just uses the computer. So I don't know why Dax is there, I guess, outside of...
I wonder if it wasn't the baby situation, I wonder if it was if it was them going, guys, we really need to use Dax. I mean, we can't just use Kira for every story. We need to spread this around a little bit.
I feel like we haven't had a lot of Kira, though. It was like a weird sort of refreshing...
She must be out for pregnancy reasons.
She is,
Dax,
yeah.
Dax was a main part of Trouble with Tribbles, and she's a main part of this one. So I assume she's just off the board.
Yes, she's recovering from her, either recovering or just about to start recovering from her baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, she definitely would have improved the situation. I don't think there's really anything else I wanted to talk about besides...
I mean, they even covered it like they did in Avengers 2, where they had to figure out what to do with Scarlett Johansson because she was pregnant, so they just had Ultron capture her for 80% of the movie.
Yeah,
which is basically what happens in this episode. So
it works. So whatever you got to do. Couldn't you think they'd have come up with more sophisticated ways to work around it, but I guess the women really just can't. You can't do anything super physical at that point in your pregnancy, so it's kind of limited.
Challenge accepted. I'm speaking for some nebulous, as yet defined pregnant woman who is going to show you some shit.
Well, let me mansplain to you, Clay, what it's like to be pregnant. All right, you're going to have some real trouble moving around. Yeah. You're going to feel a pressure.
Play this episode for your wife.
She could have handled Dukat pregnant, nine months pregnant. I think would have been that. Let's see. I don't think there's really anything else to talk about here. I did like that they call the Cardassians spoonheads. Spoonheads. Is that the first time they've actually said that in the show? No, they've said it before. I don't know if they've ever said it to a Cardassian, but Garak responds to it appropriately here. They have called them spoonheads before.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's missed opportunity to also... Well, I guess it would probably take too much of the focus. I was going to say, for the way that they set it up with the way Garak was talking, I was wondering if there was some missed opportunity for him to learn a little bit about the Cardassians' occupation.
I think he does.
I guess he kind of does. Because they do the thing about the cleaning and everything, and it's not really like...
I think
he doesn't really have a deep character change, but I guess he learns a couple of lessons.
No, I think the episode is kind of weird for Garak because Garak has never struck me as... It seems like Garak's opinion in this episode is more in line with what Dukat would have thought, but Garak never strikes me as a sort of pro-occupation Cardassian.
Right.
He seems like he's a little bit more of a generous soul, for lack of a... Like, his job wouldn't have been the pro-occupation type thing. That is the way that I would react to him, but I think it's fairly effective what they do with it. I think my favorite scene is when he feels that he can kind of negotiate with the Cardassian guard by giving them money and the guard just hits him is kind of I think that's the best scene because that shows to him that the Cardassians' treatment of the Bajorans was just more based on cruelty than any sort of logic. And that's kind of an eye-opening experience for him.
Yeah, my favorite scene was similar to that, where you get a peek inside the thought process of the writer's room, where he's in the jail cell, running through all of the logic problems of explaining to the people what is actually happening.
Yeah,
where he's like, "You're probably wondering why there's no Cardassian DNA. Well, I was surgically altered, and they also changed my I like that stuff.
They've got to somehow get around the fact of why can't they explain things to each other. And what'd you think of Red Foreman, Clarence Boddicker as Thrax?
He was I mean, I always like him. I think he was a little underutilized here. He doesn't really have much to do. But,
no, he doesn't. The weirdest scene, I think, is his scene with Quark. What did you make of the scene with Quark?
I don't really remember the scene with Quark.
It's where
not much, apparently.
He comes in and tells Quark that he's keeping an eye on him because he is smuggling some kind of crystals.
Oh, right.
That scene makes much more sense on rewatch because it's Odo.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah, that's much more of an Odo and Quark scene. Yeah.
Yep. My confusion with it is I couldn't tell if they were trying to make Quark more sympathetic, and I didn't want them to do that because I think that the way they portray Quark here is good, and it's the right way to do it, is that he's not overly sympathetic to the Bajorans in any way. He's not lying about those crystals because he's somehow like funding the Bajoran resistance with it. They've previously talked in episodes before about how he sold medicine at cost to the Bajorans, but he was still trying to sold it for a slight profit, which upsets the other Ferengi. So Quark has a slight bit of a heart, but I like the fact that they treat him basically as like a slave owner in this, who just kind of peruses the guard fence and then says, you're going to be working for me now for no pay. I like that stuff.
Yeah. No, I thought that stuff was good.
That's about it. I think we're done. We're going to take a break, play an audio clip. We'll come back, read some Patreon thoughts, give our final thoughts about things past.
That's exactly how it happened 7 years ago. It was you all along.
Yes. I was chief of security on the promenade. I was the one who charged those men with a crime they didn't commit, and I was the one who turned them over to Dukat. 3 days after the executions, there was another bombing on the promenade identical to the one that almost killed Dukat. Timur, Ishan, and Julur were innocent. All the evidence was there. The inconsistencies in the reports of the soldiers who arrested them, a pattern of bombings, the ballistics. It was all there from the beginning. But I was too busy, too concerned with maintaining order and the rule of law.
All right, so if you support the show on patreon.com/the Pensky File, you get to leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes, and we'll read them on the podcast. Holly McLaughlin says, things past, Odo is a sympathetic character without being very likable, and this episode goes a long way towards making him more human, likable, and relatable. Next comment is Christian Pouch says, in a way, it makes sense that Odo wouldn't have been able to work with the Cardassians for as long as he did without getting a little dirty. Still, it's heartbreaking to see his final scene with Kira where he can only say he hopes no more innocents died on his watch. I think one possible weakness in this is that it should have been obvious to the characters that it's all in someone's mind, that it's clearly Odo's mind, and that the whole thing is all about Odo. Stephen Cobb says, things past, DS9 at its best. Again, we're reminded that the station and the people on it existed long before the Federation rolled in. Exceptional writing. Zam Nuclear Wessel says, the Thrax performance is a lot of fun on rewatch, picturing Odo delivering all the lines. His interplay with Quark is especially good. He scoffs in exactly the same way. It also shows him much more integrated into the Cardassian system and mindset than previously. No wonder the mob wanted him gone back in Man Alone episode. Things on second thought, from the point of view of the Resistance, isn't it better that Odo executed innocents rather than the real assassins? Assassins are the more valuable than some random migrant workers. That's a bit of brutal moral clarity from Zam Nuclear Wessel right there, but I guess that's true. I guess it is better for the Resistance that he didn't actually get the right guys, but it's unfortunate for those Bajorans. Matthew Ross says, a nightmare on Odo Street, as it's been called, although a good story about guilt and that no one is perfect as they seem. I just had this naggy question throughout the entire episode. If this is Odo's memories, how the hell would he know what the prior security chief was doing, and how the hell would he know what Dukat was saying to the Bajoran girl in his office? Or what went down in Quark's? What was he everywhere all the time? That aside, Kurtwood Smith was greatest Thrax, channeling Clarence Boddicker. The freakiest thing I remembered while watching it is seeing the shot Bajorans walking by, and I thought that the makeup on the bolster marks were oozy-ish and disturbing. It's interesting how the station actually now makes sense. It's not really a promenade until the Federation gets there. Otherwise, it's just a labor pit with a guard level looking down at it. The BS on how they get stuck in Odo's memories, whatever. But it was a fun ride and way better than the prior episode. A good, dark time.
Yeah, he does kind of bring up a logic problem there, because if it's Odo's mind, then the Dukat stuff doesn't make any sense. But
yes,
I think that's just chalked it up to the clunkiness of the mechanic.
Yes. Although he's right about Dax. I think what went down on Quarks he would remember because he was Thrax in that position. So every time you're seeing Thrax, you're seeing Odo, and you should be able to draw conclusions. But the Dax stuff doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would. Shit, I forgot what I was going to say. I would move on because I don't remember what I was going to say.
Kyle Barrett says, this has got to be one of the strangest and most convoluted setups in all of Star Trek, with Odo's telepathic shared memory dream not making much sense. I think simple flashbacks maybe could have sufficed, and the Odo as Thrax reveal was fairly obvious, but the actual meat of the story and the character drama are quite good. And any misgivings I have are lessened by the final scene, which echoes back to the end of Necessary Evil, but with the roles cleverly reversed. I don't care for how the episode got there, but for the most part, it was worth it. And that's it.
I remember now.
Sure, go ahead.
I was going to say, I initially thought, I wasn't totally sure it was in his head, but I thought it might have been Dominion related. So, like, that's why I kind of hand waved that stuff.
Yeah, well, they have the scene with the changeling where Thrax changes into a changeling and they don't know
that was Thrax. Okay, I wasn't totally sure. For whatever reason, I don't know if the light in my house was really bright or something, but the screen was dark enough where I couldn't totally figure out if that was Thrax.
It's
or
in
if
the
it was
middle of a fight
Cardassian
scene too, so he's kind of moving around a lot. Yeah.
So when that happened, my first instinct was, oh, it's some sort of Dominion thing.
Just like
even at the end,
just like the search plot where they put them into the situation to see how they would react to it.
Yeah, and even at the end when Bashir's talking about the Great Link thing, I thought it was, oh, they somehow the founders somehow manipulated this into happening through some, through the Great Link somehow. That's what I was expecting them to speculate on.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting, no, you all just plugged your phones into Odo's router.
What do you think of the writers stuck the metamorphic telekinetic link thing in at the end because they wanted to remind people about Odo's loss and the fact that he might not be, or just sort of bring to the light that he might not be totally a solid going forward. What are your quick thoughts on the Odo as a solid stuff that we've had for a couple episodes? And I'm not saying that what do you think of that whole decision to go with that plot line?
I think it's been pretty interesting. I think it's really changed his character quite a bit. Because he feels more unsure of himself.
Yeah. He's lost his confidence.
Yeah, definitely. He seems a lot more, for lack of a better term, like mopey. Doesn't have as much self-confidence. He seems to get rattled a little easier. So I like that stuff. And when he mentioned the thing about the leftover, link DNA, my first thought was, oh, so maybe there's a back door for him to become a changeling again, which would be interesting because that at the very least gives you some sort of, I assume if I had to take a shot at it, it's going to be some sort of choice he has to make. Or at least I would make it a choice he has to make, whether or not to become a changeling again.
Yeah.
And so that gives him some sort of conflict over going back to what he was versus what he is now and all that kind of stuff. So
right.
It presents some good character threads moving forward.
It's like a symbolic representation of his character growth, whether or not he wants to go back to what he was. And I mention it because the next episode deals strongly with this. So I just is
the episode called Odo Could Possibly Be a Changeling Again?
Odo Makes a Symbolic Choice is the name of the episode. I'll have more to say about it. I think it's kind of a tough storyline. It has good stuff to it and bad stuff to it, and we'll probably talk more about it next time. But I just wanted to sort of prime your brain about thinking about it that way.
The more I watch this show, the more I've learned a lot about ensemble character writing, because I feel like they managed to do so much with just simple, clear character motivation.
Yeah.
Because you've got so much time that you have to spend, or I should say so little time you have to spend with each character, episode to episode, that having a very clear idea of where this character is mentally, what their mindset is, and what their core problem is, it just informs everything so cleanly, and so you can spend 5 minutes with a character and have that scene be totally consistent and feel like you're moving the plot forward when all they're doing is just sort of like sitting in a chair moping about their wife or something.
Right.
You know, if it was O'Brien's case, or you know what I mean?
Well,
it's it's such a smart way to handle everything, and I guess it's probably the way you should handle this stuff.
Yeah, I think
but they do a good job with it.
You certainly have to know what your characters are doing, right? So that when they have their scene or their 5 minutes, the scene is not wasted on something that is not even tangentially related to what their main character drive is. So that's probably the problem with Let There Be Sin, the last episode we watched, because that felt like a distraction from what Worf's character beats are.
Yeah.
It felt like it didn't understand it was a waste of time, because that was not a good representation of Worf and what he should be going through, as opposed to the other episodes that have dealt with Worf have been very good about it. So it's really just, don't waste the time that you give the characters. Have their scenes actually be about something, or at least represent something that they're going through. And I think that they do that here.
Yeah, it feels like the only character that they haven't quite figured out yet is still Dax. Dax seems sort of aimless, but
I would throw O'Brien into her pool at this point.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
I think those are the two. I think that they've moved Dax into her. We mentioned it before. Her consigliere role with Sisko, I think, is good for her. But I think that they both kind of suffer from they don't really have an interesting ethical perspective.
Yes. Yeah.
Neither of them really has any dark stuff going on, it doesn't have to be dark. Neither of them has anything that like you'd call a quandary in their daily lives.
Yeah, they don't have much of an internal, not much of an internal conflict.
Yeah. I think everyone else does. But that's it. So thank you, patrons, for commenting on the episode. You can leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. We'll read them. So Clay, what are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
I'm going to go 4.
I'm going to give it a 4 too. And it really had potential to be a 5. It just, it takes a couple bad falls down a couple stairs on its way to like getting out of the way of the episode. And I think that it just comes back to haunt it a little bit, but I really like it. I think it's
no pun intended.
I think
it just kills a few too many innocents on its way from point A to point B.
That's right. Yeah. Kill 3 exactly. And then comes to terms with itself by the end. I think it's good though. I think it's a solid episode, a good flashback episode, a good Odo episode. It just has a couple problems along the way.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's about it. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the content. Facebook, Twitter, you can go there, follow the show. You can go to Discord if you want to join the communication breakdown. I don't know why I said that, but if you
join the great link.
That's right. You'll get a little bit of flair that says you're joined the great link. If you join, you can talk to us on Discord. It's the place to be. We'll
find out about all the innocent people you've put to death.
Hopefully not. Are there? I'll greet every one of you with how many more innocent people have you executed? Discord, patreon.com/the Pensky File. You want to support the show there. That's much appreciated. It's a good way to do. I made some Patreon changes. You can go check those out. It's really just sort of streamlining the whole thing. So you can check out the post on that. Everyone should have access to it. And then let's see here. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, we have some. I guess we might as well do the announcement here, Clay. That we have. We'll have some merch out. I don't like when people call it merch, but I'm gonna do that sort of ironically. We're gonna just sell T-shirts and crap like that. So if you want to support the show and you want to get a bit of clothing, you can click on the Teespring link, which will be down below. You got a whole bunch of different stuff for the different podcasts. The Prisoner, this one, Real Ripe, Real Rotten. We've got some quotes going up there from the series. So if you don't want to support the show on Patreon, or if you want to supplement your Patreon support with a T-shirt, this is the way to do it. Clay, you have anything you want to say?
I don't think so. There's some issue of Night Moves will be on the stands by the time that you listen to this. So if you happen to catch it, you want to grab it, let me know. That'd be great. And I think when I get my comps for the last issue of Poser, maybe like I said previously, maybe we can do like a giveaway or something. I can send out the whole series to somebody.
Yeah, definitely. We'll when that
whoever
comes
buys
around.
the most T-shirts.
What's that?
Whoever buys the most T-shirts.
That's right. Buy hundreds of T-shirts.
It'll be like a PBS thing where I give you something that's worth like $8, but you have to spend like $700 in order to get it.
Tote bags. We got tote bags for days. Who even uses a tote bag? Anyway, we're gonna wrap it up there. We'll call it a day. Thank you very much for listening, guys. We will see you next time.